All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining me once again. This is Friday morning, May 12th, 2023. Mother's Day is only a couple days away, so don't forget to call your mom. Give her a hug if you can. Tell her that you love her. It's very important to do. I'm going to share something with you here this morning that I had really planned on, and it just kind of hit me out of the blue, and it's just too good for me to pass up. I don't want to wait on it. I don't want to plan any more on it. I just want to give it to you right away. Now, as I was reading out of my book of quotations, I read a page a day out of it. I found one by Charles Dickens. Surely you know who Charles Dickens is, the writer of Great Expectations, David Copperfield, A Christmas Carol. Surely you've at least seen the movie A Christmas Carol. Don't embarrass me. You've got to know who Charles Dickens is. Okay, here's what he had to say. He said, "I have known a vast quantity of nonsense talked about bad men not looking you in the face. Don't trust that idea. Dishonesty will stare honesty out of countenance any day in the week if there is anything to be got by it." I'll tell you why I like this, because we're talking about body language here. And for a short while there, I went down the rabbit hole on this topic and I watched lots of videos on body language. I read books on it and I just became briefly enchanted with it, okay? And it made me feel smart, it did. I think that's why a lot of people like this subject. In fact, if you look at the kind of views those kind of videos get, they're in the millions, okay? And I think that's one of the attractive qualities about this topic is that it makes people feel like they've tapped into some kind of magical power, and no longer can people fool them, that they're able to figure things out. And not only that, they're able to curtail any language, any body language that might give them away and fool others, right? It's kind of a win-win, so we think in our minds. But I have come to rely less on that, significantly less on that, as I've learned more. And I hope you do too, if you're someone who has been interested in this at all whatsoever. Because eventually what will happen, if you're lucky, what will happen is you'll discover that you've become quite judgmental and you've been getting a lot of people wrong. And at the same time, you're also not fooling anybody else if you think you've circumvented someone's judgment of you. So it's very important to do this because you don't want to be fooled either way. You don't want to be fooled into believing that someone's conveying, or at least sending out some kind of data or information about themselves that's not true, and you don't want to actually believe that you're fooling people when you're not, okay? So it's absolutely crucial that you understand and accept what Charles Dickens is saying here. But there's a lot more to say on this. This is just one quote that got me thinking. It just kind of propelled me to look into this a little bit further. So I went to the internet and I looked up debunking body language myths. And what came up was a Psychology Today article written by Joe Navarro. Let me tell you who he is so that you understand that he has some credentials behind him. It says he's an ex-FBI agent on deception, espionage, interrogation, and reading people, and he's written books on this topic before. Let me go back to this, okay, and share with you what he's got here. And he has, I believe it's 10 myths he debunks here. So listen to this carefully. And I hope that this resonates with you, okay? Because, I don't know, it was an eye-opener to me when I first discovered it, and I hope it'll change something for you. Okay, here's how the article goes, and it is co-authored with somebody named Abby Moronio. It says, every day we get queries from around the world about nonverbals and invariably about detecting deception through body language. The biggest takeaway from the hundreds of messages is that despite the undeniable importance of nonverbal communication, many myths and false beliefs undermine its importance, relevance, or utility. So we decided to pool our resources and comment on 10 myths about body language that are currently trending, and you may notice some have been trending for a long time. Well, obviously, Charles Dickens is from the 19th century, and he even commented on it. So this is something that's been going back for a long time. People have had opinions about this. I mean, I've heard about this for a long time. I mean, there's all sorts of comments made about what you can and cannot trust and who you can trust based on what they're doing. So anyway, let's get into it. The first one, you can detect deception based on an individual's nonverbal behaviors. Okay? False. While we wish we could, the answer is that we humans are no better than chance at detecting deception. It's a coin toss. Malcolm Gladwell commented on this in his book Talking to Strangers and showed data to reveal that we cannot trust our opinion, our perception of things. We are so horrible at determining and detecting whether someone's lying to us or not. And he gave a lot of really good evidence for that. Anyway, I'll put a link for that book down below. So what he goes on to say here, so please put this myth away. We have known this empirically since Paul Ekman's bestseller, Telling Lies, Clues to Deceit in the Marketplace, Politics and Marriage. I'll try to put links for all this. It came out in 1985. There is no single behavior indicative of deception. Not one. That's alarming. That's my comment. That's alarming, okay? I'm saying that. We need to stop associating behaviors indicative of psychological discomfort with deception and acknowledge them purely for what they are. Signs of stress, anxiety, apprehension, despair, suspicion, tension, concern, nervousness, etc., but not deception. Further, in a recently published PhD thesis in 2021, Mapala, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, used the latest motion capture, virtual reality, and eye tracking technology to examine nonverbal indicators of deception and concluded that the nonverbal cues assessed could not distinguish between honest and deceptive people. Myth number 2. The polygraph can detect lies. I've had strong opinions about this one for a while, which is why I would never submit to one, even though they're not, I don't believe they're submissible in court, but I would not, or admissible, that's what I meant to say. But nevertheless, I would never submit to one. But he says here, big myth. The polygraph cannot detect lies. It never has and never will. As the APA reminds us, the accuracy or the validity of polygraph testing has long been controversial. An underlying problem is theoretical. There is no evidence that any pattern of physiological reactions is unique to deception. An honest person may be nervous when answering truthfully, and a dishonest person may be non-anxious. Lastly, the American Academy of Science reported in 2003 that the polygraph could not be relied on because overall, the evidence is scanty and scientifically weak. Lastly, courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have repeatedly rejected the use of polygraph evidence because of its inherent unreliability, which is what I was just commenting on. Okay, number 3. Scratching with your right hand, wherever, I guess, indicates the need for help. But scratching with the left indicates temporary uncertainty rather than needing help. See, I've never personally heard this, but let's explore it anyway. Let's hear what he has to say on this. He says, this myth was incredulously published in a body language book. The basis of this myth comes from research indicating the right hand is connected to the rational left half of the brain, while the left hand is connected to the emotional right half of the brain. It was argued that scratching with either hand indicates different internal states. Although there indeed exist hemispheric dominance and lateralization for information processing, both hemispheres are deeply interconnected and do not function entirely independent from one another. There also exists no empirical evidence to support a causal relationship between feelings of uncertainty and scratching with a particular hand. Number 4, there are 3 different types of people, and you can tell their personalities and communication styles based on their body language. Really? 3 different types of people that you can... okay. This myth appeared after popular talk made its way around the internet and is founded on the ephemeral argument that all human beings fit one of 3 distinct neurological profiles. Unsurprisingly, research does not support this. Humans are far too complex to be leavened into 3 categories. I agree. It was also proposed that each of these groups has distinctive nonverbal facial features such as thin versus thick lips, different preferences for eye contact, self-touching, clothing, and an array of other assertions that are not supported by research and ignore cultural factors. All right, number 5. Contempt. My cat's being squirrely over here. Yes, cats can be squirrely. Contempt is the only asymmetric expression shown on the face. Think about that. This argument stems from the belief that there is only one distinct emotion present on our face at any one time, which has specific associated features, and that asymmetric features can accompany no emotion other than contempt. Let's consider that emotions are rarely felt in complete isolation. They are dynamic and highly fluid, overlapping, contradictory at times, and complex. Have you ever felt both happy and sad, excited about a new opportunity, but also nervous about the change? Well, I know I certainly have. What is this cat doing? Stop. Forgive me. For example, the upper lip rise, discussed in the Dictionary of Body Language, where the person smiles and answers positively, but the upper lip pulls unilaterally, indicating disgust or dislike. Like that, there are various facial behaviors, including mouth stretching, where the mouth is pulled to the side, usually seeing you realize you made a mistake, and others are looking at you, and you fear you got caught. Both of these examples are asymmetric expressions. Our facial expressions are not always indicative of only one exact emotion, and an asymmetric expression does not always indicate feelings of contempt. All right, number 6, liars will avoid eye contact, which is what Charles Dickens was talking about. This is another myth that needs to be shut down, as the research of famed psychologist, I cannot pronounce this guy's name, but I'll put it on the screen. This famed psychologist showed liars engage in greater eye contact because they want to make sure that they are being believed. When we can relax around others, we have the freedom to look away. And of course, we need to consider that in many cultures, they are taught to look down and avoid eye contact when they are being contrite. Number 7, 93% of all human communication is nonverbal. You've heard this, right? The percentages quoted often vary from anywhere between 70 and 93%. This came from a misunderstanding of a classic study by Albert Moravian. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. In his work, Moravian never stated that we can put an exact percentage to the verbal versus nonverbal element of human communication in general. Rather than in that particular study, when only one word was said, the nonverbal component was 93%. Communication is fluid and reflexive as well as situational. In other words, there is no set number. Number 8, crossing your arms across the belly says keep away. This misconception stems from research on blocking behaviors, which show that when an individual feels uncomfortable or threatened, they may use parts of their body to create a physical barrier between themselves and others. Now, I've always heard that. Hence, behaviors like the crossing of the arms signal discomfort. In my own research, I have found that these behaviors can be a signal of distress and comfort. But I have also found, more often than not, this behavior is just a comfortable way for us to rest our arms. That's what I say. Arm crossing is often nothing more than a tactile, self-comforting behavior when we are waiting for something to start. while engaged in a conversation, or even when we are upset. Oh boy, every parent knows that. Children do this all the time. What matters is the context and accompanying nonverbals like the full picture, not just an isolated behavior. Number 9, if a person answers a question by first touching their nose, they are lying. I've heard some variation of this throughout the years. Another myth that is wrong and can have serious implications, as I noted, in detecting lies versus detecting truth, serious implications. We touch our faces all day long as a means to self-soothe. I do this quite a bit myself. You've probably seen it in my videos. We naturally do so when we are being scrutinized, talked to, or feel apprehensive. Neither this nor any other isolated behaviors, such as mouth touching or wiping, indicates deception. These are pacifiers, and the honest and the dishonest use them. Last but not least, number 10, if a person looks up to the right or down to the left to answer a question, they are lying. As David Matsumoto noted in an article specifically written for the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin in 2011, 23 out of 24 peer-reviewed studies published in scientific journals reporting experiments on eye behavior as an indicator of lying have rejected this hypothesis. No scientific evidence exists to suggest that eye behavior or gaze aversion can gauge truthfulness reliably. And you know what? This is one of the things that really upsets me when I watch these. I like to watch a lot of true crime shows, that are like more or less documentaries, on 2020, Dateline, and so on and so forth. And you see these interrogations, and so many of them make me very upset because a lot of these detectives still make these fallacious assertions. They still rely upon a lot of these, and people are badgered and coerced and just browbeaten, to the point where they'll make false confessions because they can't stand the pressure anymore. And it's all based on these beliefs, these insane postulations. So anyway, here's a conclusion to this article. He says this is a short list of the many existing myths about detecting deception and body language. The reader would be wise to ask, has this been validated empirically? Are there other possible explanations? Does culture factor into any of this? Are these universal? Who is making these assertions, and in how many cultures around the world have they been observed? A little skepticism goes a long way, and of course there are plenty of empirical studies on the subject to which we should all avail ourselves. I hope that's helped. I hope it's really meant something to you. What's come to my mind just suddenly as I'm talking is there was a time when the terms highbrow and lowbrow was used quite a bit, and it's one of these things that you can't really help. People would oftentimes, and I think this is more in use during Victorian times, people would often look at the shape of a head or the size of a head to determine whether someone was intelligent or absolutely stupid. If you had a high forehead, a very large head, high forehead, people thought you had a bigger brain, therefore you were more intelligent, and smaller head, then you were considered, less intellectual, to be kind. And it's just fallacious, but that's one form. That's a body language. It's not really body language like we're talking about. It's not a demonstration. It's not an action, but it's something you can't help. It's like some kind of form of it. But people have been saying things like this for so long. And I hope that if you are someone who has embraced it or currently believe in all of that maybe you'll reconsider and have a little bit of skepticism as he talked about. Guys, I hope that this has helped. I hope it's meant something to you. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think, what you believe about the matter, and I'll reply in as timely a manner as possible. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I will catch you guys on the next one. In the meantime, be wise.